Hello, everyone. Welcome to Scouting for Chelsea on Chelsea Perspective. But before we continue, please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and more importantly, click on that bell notification button so you don't miss anything. So, let's continue. Today I have with me a very special guest, Ameya from CFC Chat. Ameya, welcome to Chelsea Perspective.
Yep, thank you so much for having me on. I think it's a brilliant series, especially with the Euros and a lot of stuff that's going on. The transfer windows open. Honestly, I love this series so much, and it's a really underrated channel where you give all fans a voice. So thank you so much for having me on, and I'd love to sort of put out my transfer target, speaking it into existence.
No, thank you very much for finding the time to be here because I know it's not easy. Everybody is busy. So when I find anybody that, that takes some time out of their busy schedule to be here with me, I do appreciate it. And thank you again for being here with me. So, Maya, what player did you scout and what position does the player play in?
So this is sort of an underrated opinion, mainly because I'm talking about the midfield position, and usually every time we say the word we need a new midfielder, there's only one player that comes to name, and that's Declan Rice, isn't it? But he's often priced so highly by West Ham, and they've slapped a £100 million valuation on him. No club's paying that amount of valuation, although he is a very good player. Don't get me wrong. I really like the player. He's honestly one of the best DMs in the league, easily. But at the same time, if we're going to spend big on a striker, then we're not going to spend big on Declan Rice as well. But we need that steal in midfield, which is why the player that I've picked is Aurélien Tchouameni, who plays for Monaco in France. And he is a midfielder, a defensive midfielder, but he also plays in central midfield. He plays in a pivot and can play as the deepest line midfielder in a midfield three as well. So he's basically versatile. Sorry about that. He's basically versatile, and he's just 21 years of age. So there's still a long time to go ahead of him, but he's very, very promising, and his stats look impeccable, as we'll see later.
Tchouameni.
Yep.
And what club did you say he plays for?
Monaco in the League
Monaco.
One.
Oh, in France.
Yep.
Okay, I have a question for you. You said he's a defensive midfielder, right?
Yep.
And in the midfield area, we still have Jorginho, we still have Kovacic, we still have, who else again there? N'Golo Kante. So why do we need so many? Why would you like the club to sign him while we still have those players there? And those players, they're all, you can say, although they have each have one shortcoming, they have their shortcomings. Let me just put it that way. But overall, they've been great. They've been phenomenal, except most especially the run to the Champions League final and also the triumph in the final against Manchester City. So why do we need a defensive midfielder?
I think this is a profile that we lack, right? Which is also why I don't understand when so many people say we have Gilmore. Why do we need another midfielder as well? But I think he's off on loan to Norwich City. I think that's pretty close as per Sky Sports. But leaving that aside, as you mentioned, we have Jorginho, we have Kante, and we have Kovacic. But like also you mentioned, they all have their shortcomings, don't they? I mean, the reason why we mainly Tuchel shifted to a three at the back was to sort of hide the shortcomings of the midfield. I mean, you can take any combination you want, right? It's not that I'm singling out one or two single players. Whoever you put alongside each other, you put Jorginho Kante, you put Jorginho Kovacic, you put Kovacic Kante, right? All three of them have their sort of deficiencies, which will arise regardless, which is why I agree about the Champions League part, right? I mean, we honestly deserve to win that. We dominated every opponent and with the same midfielders, like you mentioned. But At the same time, I just think that this squad that we currently have is good enough. It's a tournament style squad. It's good enough to win tournaments, right? We reached the FA Cup final as well. Unfortunately, we lost in the final, but we got there in the first place. But we're not suited. We don't have a squad that can win the league yet, in my opinion, because winning the league, it's 38 games, right? And you have to give it your all every single game, because any one small slip up can cost you dearly. And such players have their shortcomings, and we've seen certain sides, especially the lower sides, if you can, they've exploited these weaknesses, right? And they just sit back the entire game. They have nothing to lose. I mean, even if they can take a point off us, it's a point that they would have never thought that they would have had at that point of the season. So they can take the point, but we need those 3 points, especially if you're going to compete for the title, if you're going to finish in the top four. So we need it more than them. But when they exploit our players' shortcomings, when we commit too many men forward, for instance, we know that Jorginho and Kovacic, neither of them are especially great at tracking back, right? And that's N'Golo Kante. But none of them, if should I mention, are physical, right? None of them are tall, strong. They can't put half a challenge in. So, I mean, I just think that this is a midfield profile that we really need. And I think the managers understand that as well, which is why Rice was Lampard's target and Tuchel's target as well, reportedly. So we're in the market for a midfielder, a strong midfield destroyer, like how Real Madrid have Casemiro, if I could make that comparison. We need our own Casemiro. And with Tchouameni being just 21, and he wouldn't expect week in week out action. For instance, if you splash 100 million on Declan Rice, he would expect week in week out action, right? The club hierarchy would expect that as well. If you spend 100 million on a player, you expect him to play week in week out. But at the same time, Tchouameni's market value seems to be about 35 or 40 million, and Monaco seem content on selling for that sort of amount. And should we get him, there's going to be no pressure on him to play every game. So I'm not saying change formations just for him or put him directly into the starting lineup. But I can easily see Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic, and Tchouameni coexisting. I mean, even if we play the two midfielders, I can easily see them coexisting next season, especially with the number of competitions that we're in. Club World Cup as well, we're expected to have easily 60 plus games. And I think these four can easily coexist and get sufficient playing time. And once Jorginho and Kante, who are not getting any younger, they're almost 30 now. Once they are, past their prime, and once they're going to have to start reducing their playing time, by then we'll have Tchouameni right there, ready on the bench to take their spot in the starting lineup. So there's continuity as well, which is why I've gone for this particular midfield target.
Yeah, okay. I understand your point, and your argument is, I can say it's clear. I can understand clearly the point you're trying to pass. But yes, it is true. Kante is not getting any younger, and it's important that we have an understudy from now on, and not wait until he's approaching the end of his career before we start looking for somebody that is going to be, and you can say, an equal replacement for him. But that's, yep. By the way, my question is, what does Tchouameni bring to the table that Kovacic, Kante, and Jorginho don't already offer to the team? Because like we've established at the start of this episode, they've been great. Defensively also, yep. They've done quite well. Most especially when you pair either Kovacic or Jorginho with Kante, because we know that Jorginho does well when you pair him with somebody who is defensively sound. So how can you convince the club to say, okay, this is really the reason why we want this guy, other than he's tall, he's strong, and can be a good replacement for Kante when the time comes? And you and I know the way Kante takes care of himself and how good he is. He's going to be there for quite some time. So what exactly, Ameya, does Tchouameni, will he bring to the table that other players we have in that position don't already offer to the team?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. Everyone gets asked that a lot every time we say we need a defensive midfielder. But you look at our other areas of the pitch, right? Especially take the attack. We have every possible kind of player, like even subcategory of player that we can require, except an out and out goal scorer, which is what we're after. But we have a strong pacey forward in Timo Werner. We have he's a bit of an inside forward as well, if you can count that. Then we have Ziyech, who likes to cut in on the right onto his left foot, and he's a wide playmaker. We have Pulisic, who's a more direct sort of winger. We have Kai Havertz, who's a false nine. And the only profile that we really, really lack is that out and out striker, which is what we're after. It's the similar situation in midfield, right? Jorginho, brilliant regista. He basically, you'd never have to worry about losing the ball when he's at the base of your midfield, right? Because you're going to keep possession for the entirety of the game. And then you've got N'Golo Kante, who can run and intercept anything. You've got Kovacic, who can dribble past. I mean, you give him like an inch of space anywhere, and he's going to find the way to dribble past that space. So they all have their good qualities. And as you've mentioned, they worked this season, right? But we've also struggled to break down teams so many times this season. And I think what Brighton was it, Leeds, so many times we've seen a 0-0 draw. I mean, you could say that it's down to finishing, but at the same time, we didn't create too many chances against these opponents as well. And these are the sort of games that are going to cost us. So when that is the situation, this is a little bit selfish from me, but I still personally prefer Mount in midfield, right? It would give us more attacking opportunities. For example, if we play 3 and we move Mount into midfield, then we have 3 attackers freeing up space up front, right? So I think, and that allows us further to be more, that allows Tuchel to tinker more, basically, and he can use the excellent attacking plethora that we have at the moment. And we cannot shift to a midfield 3 and a back 4 with the current crop of players that we have, like we saw under Sarri initially, or like we saw under Lampard as well, where he tried to use Jorginho Kante pivot, or sometimes played Jorginho as the lone DM, or sometimes played Kante as the lone DM. It just doesn't work. So I think Jorginho isn't defensively stable enough to be a lone DM in the Premier League, while N'Golo Kante just doesn't have the ball progression or, retaining the possession type of football, which Jorginho offers. So we need a player who is, clubbed everything into one, and that is Tchouameni. In fact, when I read you the stats, he has excellent progressive passing. He is excellent defensively. He's great at recovering, loose balls. He's great at winning ground duels. He's excellent at winning aerial duels as well. So he's tall, he's strong, he's a good progressor. And another attribute, in fact, is that he takes long shots. He has like 52 shots taken this season over the course of the season, while all 3 of the midfielders that you just mentioned combined have not even reached that figure, right? Jorginho's is in single digits, Kante's is in single digits as well. So that is one profile that we haven't had for a very long time. I think since Matic probably was the last defensive midfielder who came out and took long shots for us. Since then, we have not had such a midfielder, and he provides that as well. He is, in my opinion, the complete package to step in. He can step in next to whoever he wants. He can play next to Jorginho. He can play next to Kovacic. He can play next to Kante as well if you're on the defensive. So he is an all-round package, which is what makes this deal so much more exciting. And we can choose to nurture him whichever way that we want. And honestly, I think he can coexist, and he definitely won't put up a fit if he's not getting the playing time and whatnot.
Great points again, Ameya, and thank you for taking some time to answer that question, so to speak. Okay, now, can you take some time and give us a lowdown of his statistics? Let's see if his statistics will justify your argument that the club needs him. Over to you, Ameya.
Yep, thank you so much for that, man. I have got everything written down. Actually, he of course won the League One Young Player of the Year as well last season, so that was a pretty good achievement for him. So, just to tell you how good he is all around, right? I'll just mention, in the League One, in what all aspects he remains like he is in the top 10 leaderboard, right? If I could just say it, so that you get an idea of how all-round of a player he is. So he ranks 2nd in tackles made as well as tackles won. Then he ranks 4th in interceptions. He ranks 10th in successful pressure. So he can play the high intensity sort of system that Tuchel wants his players to play. He ranks 10th in dribble percentage, so he can wiggle out of tight spaces, and he ranks 10th in progressive passes. So if you could see what I was saying earlier, second in interceptions, fourth in tackles means that he can do the Kante aspect as well. 10th in pressures means he's suited to Thomas Tuchel's style of play. 10th in dribble percentage, he can dribble out of tight spaces like Kovacic, and 10th in progressive passes, which means he has the Jorginho side to him as well. And not only that, I think he has the most number of loose balls recovered all across Europe in the top 5 leagues. So he is honestly an absolute powerhouse in midfield, and he reminds me of a young Casemiro. I think I mentioned that earlier as well.
You did.
If he is a diamond in the rough, and if he is polished properly, and who else can polish him better than Thomas Tuchel's demanding system, which I think he will fit perfectly. So that is the stat breakdown from me. And if you want, I can also tell you the various positions that he's played this season, and where he can play.
Go ahead. If that supports your argument, go ahead.
Yep, it definitely does. He's comfortable playing in a midfield pivot, as he played all season alongside Fofana. That was his defensive partner at Monaco. And then, so he has also played as a lone DM a couple of times later on the season, the deepest lying midfielder. He's also played as one of the 8s in a 4-3-3, which is why he can cover a lot of ground as well. So he is comfortable all across midfield, probably not attacking midfield. I think that's a stretch too far, but he is comfortable playing in a pivot, as a single 6, as a double 6, or as one of the 8s, the defensive 8s in the system as well. And he's excellent physically, so strong in the air. One stat that I forgot to mention is that he's won 69.2% of his aerial duels as well. So he's very good in the air, and he's made 42 appearances this season. So honestly, he's not injury prone or whatnot, and he can hold his ground throughout the course of the entire season. So he's physically fit as well. And one of the stats that I mentioned earlier was that he takes shots from distance. Right, he's got 52 shots this season, which is more than all 3 of our midfielders combined. And it sometimes works, right? Sometimes you need someone outside the box ready to ping one in, and that's what he does. And honestly, he's got the Fabregas seal of approval as well, who's his teammate at Monaco. So I just think that it's too good of a deal to pass on.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say his statistics are phenomenal, man. It's not easy. And a question I have for you, maybe I missed it. How many goals in the past season?
I think he has just 2 goals and 5 assists. That's not his most encouraging statistic, man, but not really a goal scorer. But he does his job in the midfield, and he goes about his business and drops a 7 out of 10 every game minimum, which is what we need: consistency.
Yeah, we need consistency. That's the truth. But the question I have for you, we've always had the problem of goal contributions from the midfield. And Jorginho, who is, I think he's the highest goal scorer for us this past season, right?
Yeah.
But the whole goal came from penalty spots, right?
Yeah.
So now it doesn't look like Tchouameni will solve that problem for us.
I think.
Why go for him?
Yep. If I could answer that, in a little bit of a different way, I touched upon this earlier, right? If we move to a 4 at the back system, which allows us to free up one more spot in the attacking position, and I frankly think that our fullbacks are good enough to play in a back 4 as well. I know Reece James probably doesn't have the impetus to play as a right wing back, but he's definitely good enough as a right back, and I don't think anyone can argue about that. So if we do switch to a 4 at the back, and if we do get enough protection from the midfielders, which is what Tchouameni will offer, in my opinion, if we play a 4-3-3 with Jorginho as the deepest lying midfielder, and probably Kante and Mount, then I think that it's still not defensively solid enough, in my opinion. Personally, that's just what I feel. I just think that on counters we'll probably get exposed. But if you do put Tchouameni in there, right, and you move Mount as one of the midfielders, Mount was our joint top scorer last season as well, along with Jorginho. So I think we move Mount to midfield, and that's your goals from midfield. And not only that, it permits us to use another attacker in the front as well, which is an issue I see with the 3 at the back system, because I know Mount is too good to be dropped, but at the same time, he occupies one of the attacking positions, which should ideally be occupied by one of our attackers. So if you do free him into midfield, that allows us more fluidity in attack, that allows us to play more attacking players, that offers us a goal threat from midfield through Mount, and Tchouameni is right there to protect the back four in case there is a counter attack, because he's pretty quick on his feet as well, and he knows when to make a tackle, he knows when to put the tackle in, he knows when to take a card for the team in case you're on the counter. So he, indirectly, he does improve our goal threat from not only from midfield but also frees up more attacking spaces up front.
So overall, your argument seems to be that he brings stability in the midfield and also protection, proper protection for the defense.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad addition after all. Okay, next question for you, Ameya. And I got to say, you've been brilliant at it. I just feel like we should keep going for as long as possible. But let's see how much we can squeeze in, because your answers are great, and I am enjoying this conversation with you, and your arguments are solid. You pretty much, if I am the one of the board members at the club, you've already convinced me to go for the player. I have to tell you that. So let me ask you this. You seem to know him very well. So the question now is, do you think he's better than Jorginho? Is he better than Kovacic? Is he better than Kante?
Oh, now you've put me in a tough spot there, mate, because if someone sees this and clips this, I'm going to get absolutely mudded on Twitter, aren't I? But to answer your question, I think I'll try and answer this in a more diplomatic way. Do I think he's better than Jorginho and Kovacic and Kante? Absolutely not, right? Let's get that clear straight away. But at the same time, do I think he's more well-rounded and could provide stability? I would have to say yes. I think what we're missing right now, we have so many players who have key attributes that they offer to the team, which are invaluable, right? Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, they're all system players, and you can't have all system players. You need to have that one player who's willing to take on everything and, say, you know what, you go do your thing, go do what you're good at. And trust me, I'll be there in the back to clean up in case you mess up. And that's the player that Tchouameni is, in my opinion. And that's what he brings to the table. So in clear words, is he better than any of our midfielders? No. But will his addition provide more stability, and can he be more well-rounded in the future? Undoubtedly. I think undoubtedly in the future, he definitely has the potential to be not only one of the best midfielders at the club, but in the world as well.
Perfectly answered. I appreciate you taking the time to answer that question, because it wasn't an easy question, and it is a question that can also get you into trouble. If you understand what I mean. Okay, Ameya, I know you've mentioned his market value while you were answering. I think the second question or so. But to be specific now, and also for the benefit of the fans and viewers, what is his market value?
Yeah, so his market value, I think, is around 35 to 40 million pounds. I think if a bid comes in that region, Monaco would be looking to sell. They aren't a club that, especially has title ambitions or want to improve or something like that. They're always a club that signed young players and then developed them and then sold them later on. They're sort of like the Dortmund of League One. So I don't think they would be too opposed to selling the players. So I think if a reasonable fee, I would say 35 to 40 million pounds, that sounds like an absolutely reasonable fee to me. And that sounds like something that could work for us as well. It's a cut price deal for a profile we need, and we can splash the rest on that one striker who I shall not name so that we don't jinx the deal. But yep, I think 35 to 40 million pounds would be his market value, in my opinion.
Yeah, if we can get him at that price, it will be an absolute steal given his attributes. It is rare to see players who have, you can say, who ticks all the boxes that he ticks. Some, in most cases, you see them good at defending, but poor in ball progression and all that. But I think he's a brilliant player overall. So now, on a final note, are we looking at him? And if we're looking at him, do you think we can get him?
I think we are. We were linked with him a little bit earlier on, and I think a couple of journalists did mention our interest. And in fact, I don't know if you know, but there's a Instagram page called CFC News page, which is actually very reliable. I think that the person behind that account has got so many things right from last season. He always gets the lineups right and whatnot. And in fact, in his latest article on Simon Phillips and Dan McCarthy's, they have their this thing, right? Their blog. So on their blog, he has mentioned that Peter Cech is very interested in the player. I mean, he seems to drive the player to the board, in fact, and his recommendations, of course, we cannot overlook. He, of course, recommended Edouard Mendy, and he won us the Champions League, didn't he? So I think his recommendations are top notch for sure. He's got an eye for talent, and I think I don't know how reliable it is, but apparently he has scheduled a meeting with Tchouameni's agent. I mean, don't quote me on this. That's just what I read
No,
in
I
the
understand.
blog.
I'm with you.
Yep. So I think there definitely is a little bit of interest. I don't know if it's as concrete as we think it is, but there's surely an interest. And I know that Chelsea are definitely going to be keeping tabs on this player and have been for the entirety of the season. So let's see as the transfer market as the transfer market progresses. It's too hard to say, and everything can change in an instant. We know that the club likes to get its business done behind the doors, right? I mean, as soon as the news comes out within 48 hours. Within 48 hours, he's already holding the kid, isn't he? That's how we like to do business. So it's hard to say for sure. But I think the interest is there. And if I don't know if we'll make a move or not, but I mean, there's a long way to go. Hopefully we do.
Yeah, I hope we'll get him. You've made me fall in love with him, and I will now. I'll go take some time and also research his statistics on my own and watch more of his videos to get to know him better. Ameya, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show for this episode of Scouting for Chelsea, and you've been a great guest. Please take some time and introduce yourself to the fans. Let them know all there is to know about you, how they can find your content. Over to you, Ameya.
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. I know that we've tried this, but then I wasn't free the last week. So thank you so much for sticking around and making time for me.
My pleasure.
Yep, it was a great discussion. And honestly, I hope I've got more people on the Tchouameni train. That's what I like to call it. I'm, of course, the person in charge of the train, pulling all the horn and stuff in the front, but you're free to board in the back. But yeah, so guys, my is mentioned right down below. It's at Lampard's Legacy on Twitter. So if you enter that in the search, then my name should pop up. If you really want to know, it's an abbey of Tuchel holding the Champions League trophy, isn't it? So that's great. But I'm also mainly on YouTube. We have a channel called CFC Chat. So if you could enter that in the in the search column, it should pop right up. We've got some great content coming up for you guys on that. And I would like to thank Coachila for joining some of our streams as well. It's much appreciated. And hopefully I convinced a few of you guys to come on and join me on that channel as well. And it would be great if you could go out there and subscribe and follow all our streams, because we have some huge guests coming up. We had Eunice from Eunice Talks Football earlier, and we still are in talks of getting bigger guests. You know how it is, the short of time. So we're gonna get bigger guests on for sure. So if you could, if you guys could go out there and subscribe and switch on the bell notifications, then that would be great, and join us for the streams. And while I'm at it, also subscribe to Chelsea Perspective if you guys haven't already, because a great channel. He provides so much content for us, and he gives everyone an opportunity to come out there and make their views heard, which is so great to see. It's truly a fans channel, isn't it? So that would be brilliant if you guys could subscribe to his channel and like this video as well, like he mentioned earlier.
Ameya, thank you very much for taking the time to introduce yourself. Like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And guys, please go check out CFC Chat. They have some great content and amazing perspective for Chelsea Football Club. And Ameya, I will make sure to leave your information in the description section so that people can see, see the link to your channel, and also make sure you subscribe to CFC Chat and follow Ameya on Twitter. As you can see, his Twitter handle is on the screen. And also, please don't forget to comment, like, share the video, and more importantly, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and click on the bell notification button so you don't miss anything. Again, it is me, Coachila, and Ameya, my guest. We appreciate you all, and thank you for watching. Bye.